everyone, and welcome back to our next episode of Big Data Talks, in which we have conversations with industry experts about the way in which data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence are changing the way we live. My name is Jan-Willem Middelburg, and I will be again your host today. I'm the author of the Enterprise Big Data Framework, which is hosting this series of Big Data Talks. You can always watch back the recording of this discussion on YouTube, the Big Data Framework website, and the podcasting platforms on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And today, I have the absolute great pleasure to welcome a remarkable guest, a true trailblazer in the world of data, better known as Susan Walsh. Known as the Mistress of Data, Susan has carved a niche for herself using her expertise in spend data classification, supplier normalization, and taxonomy customization. With a background that includes sales and customer account management for industry giants like Philips and Colgate Palmolive, Susan discovered her passion and talent for data, ultimately leading her to establish the classification guru in 2017. And you can imagine why I'm thrilled to be welcoming Susan to our show today. Susan, we talked a little bit in advance, and we kind of already feel that we know each other.
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely thrilled to have you with us here today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on as well. I'm thrilled to be here.
Where are you dialing in from today?
I'm at home in Guildford in the data den. It's a bit miserable outside. I was just complaining about the weather. We've not had a summer here, so I'm actually quite happy to be at home working. So.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. So we have to talk just right out of the gates about the nickname and how you became the classification guru. So I'm very interested to learn what's your story and how did you end up in this whole fascinating world of data?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a wild ride, really. So, as you mentioned, in my 20s, I worked in sales and telesales and customer service for Colgate, Philips, SC Johnson. So, did my corporate time, realized that it wasn't really what I wanted to do. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I don't even know how this idea came around. But I ended up opening a women's clothes shop here in Guildford.
Mm-hmm.
That was about 13, 14 years ago. And it was a beautiful shop, had lovely clothes, and nobody came in and bought anything. So I managed to stay open for about 7 months and was so racked with debt that I could not even afford to go bankrupt. I had to save up for 6 months to file for bankruptcy. But it kind of worked out well in the end because that is where I fell into data. I found an ad online to go and work for a spend classification company. That's where I learned how to classify data and do all the wonderful things that I do now. And I spent 5 years with them, learning my craft, managing a team of 14 people. And yeah, then we got bought by a large company and it just wasn't the same. So it was time to move on. And I didn't know where I could get a job doing the same thing because I didn't come from procurement or data. So for me, the only option was to either start a whole new career again or start a business. So that is where the classification guru came from. And the reason for the name is we spend a lot of time having to Google companies to find out what they do so we can classify them. Mm-hmm. And the number of companies who do not tell you what they actually do on their website is unreal. I would say more companies don't tell you what they do than do tell you. And so I wanted to be really clear from the start what I did, like put it in the name. And I knew that I was very good at what I did, so I decided to call myself a guru. So that's where the name came from.
Nice. And I have to say, it's a very catchy name. It's something that kind of sticks to mind. So I think from a marketing perspective...
and it's, I'm not taking myself too seriously here. I'm not like, I'm the best at this. But yeah, it's memorable and it's a bit fun.
Yeah, it's a bit fun. And I think that's only half the work. And that kind of makes you stand out and also makes people recognize you.
Yeah.
So you had quite a journey, and obviously I've been following you online, and we've connected before previously. And I'm always wondering especially when people make a career transition, and you've been one of those people
Yeah.
that moved from, well, basically the world of non-data completely to the world of data.
Yeah.
What is the aspect that fascinates you so much around this specific topic particularly?
I think I found my bit of data that I really loved, because in my other jobs I had worked with spreadsheets and had to manage, various different things. And I really didn't enjoy working with spreadsheets at all,
Mm-hmm.
because it was more numbers based. And I am terrible with numbers. But when I found something it's a text based job, I am classifying information. I'm
Yeah.
not being asked to do complex formulas to work out the percentage or the ROI or something like that. Um, yeah, that's when I, kind of was like, oh, this is my thing. I found my thing. And so I always say to people, when they're starting out in data, try lots of different things, because there's so many different aspects of data that you could work in. Just because one isn't right doesn't mean they're all not right.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to find your thing.
The one that's really driving you. And for
Yeah.
you, that's obviously a classification. Now,
Yeah. And
so
it,
for everyone who's listening and has no idea of what classification is, because we have a lot of people on this show that are new to the whole domain or are just getting started, could you, in a very simplistic way, kind of explain what we mean with classification, especially
Yeah,
in this data
absolutely.
domain?
Because I discovered once I set up my business that there's different kinds of classification too. So there's like file hierarchy, documentation classification.
Mm-hmm.
That is not what we do here. We work specifically with procurement and spend data. And that information tends to be a supplier / company name with an invoice description. So, for example, you might have bought something from Staples, and the invoice description might have several lines, and it could be pens, papers, folders, uh, ink cartridges. Now, depending on what the client wants, we could classify that to level 1 might be facilities, level 2 might be office supplies.
Mm-hmm.
So we might go as far as that, or we might go to level 3, which could be then writing supplies, desk supplies, filing and storage, computer supplies. And then we could even go to level 4 and then split out into ink cartridges, folders, pens, pencils, etc. So what we do is we categorize all that information, that all those
Mm-hmm.
products or services that have been bought. And what the client can then do is look at, well, how much have we spent on legal services in the last year, by region, by country, by department. How many suppliers do we have of legal services? We might have 200 different lawyers and we only need maybe 50, maybe not even as many as that. So can we rationalize our supplier base? Let's have a look at how much we're spending with one supplier. So let's say PwC. And then what happens is in the data sets, we'll see PricewaterhouseCoopers, P.W.C, PwC. We will normalize that.
Mm-hmm.
Then the client gets a true picture of how much they're spending with PwC globally. And that means they can go and negotiate better rates, because they're like, look, we're spending this much with you. What can you do?
Yeah. So
So that's what we
basically,
do.
you're um, basically visualizing, or you're making the patterns of customer spend unhidden from in the tremendous data trove that organizations have.
Yeah, we are you without classifying it, it's probably like a helicopter view. So you can
Yeah.
see bits of the landscape and you can make out there's some trees. But what we're doing is we're maybe like what's the word, it's drone. So we could then zoom in to like the level of the leaves
Yeah.
and the branches of the trees, rather than just
So I can only imagine that for like a larger company with tens of thousands of invoices, or maybe even hundreds, this must be a tremendous job. How do
oh
you tackle
yeah.
complexity and size with that?
A lot of them just don't have the visibility that they need. But also, I mean, it's not just about spend management. If you don't know what's going on with your suppliers and your spend, there could
Mhm.
be instances of fraud.
Okay.
Also, what's known as rogue or maverick spending. So, people within the organization, you might have agreed suppliers that you have to buy your computers from supplier A, but people are buying them somewhere else. They're not supposed to be. So, and they could be paying more for it. So, you know, being able to just get visibility and a check on that as well.
Mm. And do you use specific tooling to do that? Because oh, you just mentioned Excel. It's going to be quite difficult to do all of that in an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, we do
Uh,
not use Excel here at the Classification Guru. We have an off the shelf software called Omniscope. And
okay.
over the last 12 years, 13 years, I've developed a methodology on how to classify data using this tool. My team are all trained in that. And so we don't automate, we don't use AI, we use very highly experienced people who've been doing this for over 10 years to clean and classify the data. We do that, and then at that point, the data will be ready to then be automated or put into a system, or something that is more automated.
Yeah.
But we're that
And
first part.
does that matter what kind of input data you have, or does it work on top of basically every input system?
We have worked with as little as a company name,
Okay.
uh, to as detailed as line by line details of like nuts, bolts, screws, etc. So we can work with pretty much
And anything.
anything. And that really is where our skills and knowledge come into play, because if you just have a supplier name, you really have to use context and knowledge to be able to classify properly.
Absolutely. So I think it's a very interesting solution that actually brings a lot of real value for organizations on a day-to-day basis.
It
I'm
does,
all,
but
yeah, go ahead.
people don't want to invest in cleaning data. They don't see the ROI, they don't see the benefits. The people on the ground using it do, but the decision makers, it's harder to convince them.
Why do you think that that's the case in we're in 2024, everyone is talking about data all day long. Why is it so difficult for decision makers to take that first step?
This is a discussion that's been going on for at least 20 years, and it's still a problem. And I genuinely think that there's a lack of knowledge at senior level. I think that maybe it's seen as a menial task that anybody can do, and that's not the case. It does take a lot of time and experience and knowledge. And quite often if you clean data, you're preventing mistakes before they happen. So, you know, you can't go and say, well, we've saved you this from happening, because it didn't happen. So it's very difficult. And I often say to people, like, try and record the time that you're spending each week to clean data and fix data to do what you do, and put a value on that and go to the business with that to justify the cost, because then it might be a bit of an eye opener for them.
And it will be a staggering amount if you start calculating
Yeah.
that.
But I also think that, I try to target a lot of the up and coming future decision makers. I think in the future, to get that buy-in will be easier, because they're the ones that will have worked with this data and will know the value of having it clean.
You mentioned awareness or lack of awareness, for better word, is one of those driving forces behind this. I see that online and in sessions and webinars and podcasts such as this one, you are advocating for that awareness quite a lot. Is that the reason that you thought, well, let's become more vocal about this so that the audience of people who start to understand this becomes bigger?
Uh, it really did start as I'm trying to promote my business and get
Yes, yeah.
awareness for what I do, and then it's snowballed into something much bigger than that. I think, I even see a lot of young people coming out of university with amazing data science degrees, skills, and yet they don't know how to look at the data and actually interpret it. And so that, so they could write the best coding rules and things in the world, but they don't know if the output is right or wrong. And so I'm kind of here to say, right, well, you need to understand that bit too, to really bring true value to what you're doing, or work with people who know the data. It's kind of, it's the forgotten part, really. Everyone wants to do the cool, sexy bit, but actually none of that will work without knowing the data and clean data. Yeah.
Right. I think I'd like to quote one of the articles from the New York Times that said around the data cleaning is sometimes still regarded to as the janitor's job,
Yeah.
but it does have to be done.
Yeah.
Is that something you share?
Yeah. It's so I actually say I'm kind of like the trash woman of the
Yeah.
data world. So if we didn't have our trash and our garbage and our rubbish collected every week from the bin men and women, society would literally fall apart. There would be disease, there would be health issues, it would be messy and smelly. And these people silently come and clean, and we never notice that anything is even wrong. And cleaning data is the same. It's like it's not until something goes wrong that people actually notice there's a problem, you know. Um, and it's a thankless and undervalued task, but I'm trying to make it a bit more fun and interesting to get more people involved, because what's going to happen is, and it already is happening, is there are hugely skilled people, but there's not people who are really being able to interpret the data.
Well, making it fun and more approachable is definitely something you've been doing. And as you mentioned, what started as a kind of a way to promote your business has kind of come to a way in which you are a voice now in the industry.
Yeah.
I've seen that you were recognized by DataIQ and won the Data Champion Award 2 times,
Yes.
2022,
Yes.
2023.
Yes.
I know from experience how hard that is. Um, so I think it's fair to say that this is kind of a hobby that kind of snowballed and kind of got a bit out of hand.
Yeah, and also I
Is that
would
a correct
say
way of
that
looking at it?
it's been a pleasant surprise, because I'm not corporate. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not proper. I do wild, crazy things at times, but yet people still like will relate to that and enjoy my content and what I do. And so that's been really rewarding, to be
Yeah,
recognized for my skills as being me, and not
yeah,
just
absolutely.
a corporate face. So that's been
That
really
doesn't mean
rewarding.
that there's a lot of demand for people who can explain things that are seemingly difficult in more simple terms and in
Yeah.
more relatable terms.
And I think because I came from the business side, I see both sides as well. So,
Mhm.
but also I would just say that I wouldn't still be in business 7 years later if there wasn't still a massive problem. Like, we
Mhm.
wouldn't have any clients. It's still ongoing. And, this is not something that's going away. And with the introduction now of Gen AI, it's people are really starting to understand the importance of having that clean data to get the right information back.
Yeah. How do you, and maybe this is a bit of a sidestep, but how do you look at Gen AI, especially related to the work that you're doing? Because there's a lot of people who say, no, that Gen AI is going to solve all our problems and it's going to be able to automatically make all of these analyses. And uh,
We've
what's your view
tried.
on that? Yeah.
We've tried, and it doesn't work in what we're doing right now. And it
Hmm.
is a right now thing. That's not to say it will not happen in the future. I don't know where the original information came from that it's learned from. I can't trust that that's right.
Hmm.
We could probably start to build our own in-house based on our data, which after maybe a year would be at a really great level. But you have to be, careful about knowing where the source of the information came from. Is it accurate? How do you know? Can
Yeah.
you verify it somewhere? There are certain areas where it's really good. Like if you ask it for facts, it's very
Yeah.
good. But if you're asking it to make a contextual decision, or I hear it's not very good at maths, then you've got more issues.
Yeah. So obviously, Gen AI, it's the talk of the town, the hype. Everyone is busy with these months. You kind of go to a podcast, a conference, or a white paper without being involved there. Do you think it's overhyped?
Oh, absolutely. I think there are areas that it's going to be revolutionary, but it's not a blanket approach. There are other areas where you still need people like us to come in and do the really horrible, dirty manual
Work.
bits.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the approaches I also do a lot of the conference speaking, etc. And one of the questions I always like to start with is who's using Gen AI, and the whole room raises their hands. And then the next question I always like to ask is, can anybody here to me explain actually how it works? And then you see it's kind of like completely blank. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe a few techies who know. But I always think that that's representative about the fact that we're now all using tools without having a fundamental understanding around what's going on underneath the
yeah,
hood, and who's actually driving this car, and how is it making its specific decisions.
yeah,
And that's also something I kind of hear back from your kind of work, that underneath the hood you kind of first need to know what you're doing before you can start making decisions around that.
yeah.
Is that correct?
And those people that you're talking to are probably the budget holders who are like, oh,
Yeah.
we need Gen AI, but we don't really know how it works. And it's kind of the opposite thing with our services, is that yeah, we need it, but they don't think we need it, and they don't understand how it works, so they don't really see the value in it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, and then that's a difficult discussion, I think, to tackle at times.
yeah, but one person at a time. That's just
That's absolutely true.
chipping away.
Chipping away, that's for sure. Now, I'd like to kind of dive a little bit deeper into some of the work that you've done.
Yeah.
And let's start around another great accomplishment. You've written a book, and it's called
I
Between the
have.
Spreadsheets,
I do actually.
Classifying and Fixing Dirty Data.
Yes, this is
Tell me
it.
about that. It looks
Yeah,
beautiful.
I can't believe it's going to be 3 in September. I don't read books. Like, I really don't. I'm a terrible reader, and I never had any kind of desires to write a book. But what I could see was that there wasn't really any resources out there in terms of how to classify data, how to normalize data, how to clean data, all in simple things like Excel. Like, there's loads of resources how to write code and do this and do that. But most people at their desk who are not data people are just trying to get through their day job. And so I wanted to do something that was, useful for everybody.
And
And so that's where it came from. Yeah.
so in just I would say limited summary or executive summary, if I can call
Yeah.
it that way. What does the book contain?
It contains a how-to guide on how to normalize suppliers, classify spend data, build a customized taxonomy,
Okay.
clean names and addresses in Excel. There's a data horror stories chapter where people have anonymously donated data horror stories that happen to them where things have gone wrong. And then also there is a chapter on the dirty data maturity model, because we
Mhm.
see lots of fancy consultancy maturity models out there that just, don't really mean anything. This is a very visual approach to trying to get your organization on board with where you are at the data cleaning stages. So, yeah, bit
I
of a
like the
resource to cover all areas.
I like the title of the data horror story. Maybe you should make a movie out of that, or maybe
Yeah,
even a separate book.
yeah,
Could you
definitely.
illustrate a simple example?
Yeah, my favorite example from the horror stories is a company where they had mailed out to all their members about their membership renewal.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, some of the data had slipped, so the names didn't match the correct addresses. And so it was going to the right address, but with the wrong name.
Nice.
And internally, sales and marketing were wanting money from the data team because they'd messed up. But what the data team did was they actually looked at the data, and it didn't actually impact the renewal rate. People, even though it was sent to the wrong name, people were still renewing their membership, so it didn't really affect anything
At all.
So that was one of my favorites, because it really caused an internal battle.
Whereas ultimately the result was that it wasn't even necessary. Is that correct?
Yeah, isn't that really interesting?
That's a very interesting story. Now, obviously, I've been doing my homework before talking to you, and one of the main models, or if I can call it a model or methodology, is the code methodology that you mentioned in your book.
Data code.
So can you explain in again very simple terms to everyone who's listening, what is that and why you should use it?
Yeah, I realized pretty quickly that a lot of people inputting data are not data professionals. The data people know how to input data properly. They know the reasons why they need to do it. But I think we needed something that was relatable, memorable, easy to understand for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the data code came from. So first of all, your data has to be consistent. That means that you are using the same date formats, you're inputting things in the same way, you're using the same languages, units of measure. Everything needs to be the same. Once it's consistent, it then needs to be organized. So decide how you want to categorize it. Do you need region information, country, business unit? Or if it's in procurement, what kind of categories do you want to classify your data as? Once it's organized, it has to be accurate. So decide what that is within your team, because obviously, finance needs 100% accuracy. Sales and marketing, probably not the same criteria. So agree what that is. So once it's consistent, organized, accurate, it then becomes trustworthy. And how often do we hear we don't trust the data?
Yeah.
And so that is the data coat. And the other thing is, once you put your data coat on, it has to stay on all year round, because the real secret to clean data is maintenance. You have to maintain it constantly.
So obviously, this is a brilliant conceptual model on how organizations should treat it. But obviously, I'm exaggerating, or I'm highlighting the word should, because reality for most organizations is different. So if I'm listening now and I think, this is a good concept, let's get started with that.
Yeah.
Where do I start?
Head to the Classification Guru YouTube channel. There's a couple of different quote videos.
Okay.
Again, it's like fun, it's memorable, it's not too serious. And then get your teams involved in building out your own data code. So get everybody involved in what is consistent to you, to your team, what is organized, what is accurate, what is trustworthy, and build it out from there. Get people involved.
Absolutely. I think getting people involved is probably the most important, but also the hardest thing in order to make this actually work.
It is. And actually, I am dropping a blog later today on digital transformation, and people will be surprised to hear that the title is like the secret to digital transformation isn't clean data, it's people,
Yeah.
because
No,
they really are the key.
I'm 100% in agreement with you.
Yeah.
Now, the principles you're describing in code is I would say, what in most enterprise IT shops is what people generally refer to as data management, data governance specifically.
Yeah.
And there's entire teams trying to make a sense of this, and I'm
Yeah.
deliberately saying trying. Data management has been around for 30, 40 years. I recently spoke to somebody from Dama, and he mentioned that the organization was already a few decades old.
Wow.
And why haven't we still figured this out?
I think that one of the issues is perception, like, oh, it's so boring and stuffy, and
Mhm.
governance sounds intimidating. People don't really think it relates to them. I think the other thing is that we tend to have a blanket governance for the whole organization, but what we really need is individual governance for each department within an organization that feeds up into like an overarching. Because I can tell you from experience that what procurement are looking at is very different to what finance is looking at. They need very different things. And so the governance between those two departments would be very different. And I think we have to not just blanket apply rules to everything because it doesn't work.
Correct. So you see different departments generally don't collaborate, and there's just IT kind of managing it for all.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and they don't necessarily understand what procurement or finance or sales and marketing needs. They just look at it from a data perspective. And I
yeah,
guess again that's where like I've got experience of working within departments and businesses, so I can see both sides.
yeah,
And it's we have to get everybody on board, and I don't
and
think we're there yet.
yeah, and that's ba- basically already kind of one of the next main points that I wanted to talk to you about, because that getting people on board, we already kind of established that it's ultimately a human aspect to look into.
Yeah,
How do you get people on board with something that, as you said, is sometimes referred to as stuffy or boring, or this is just the work for the IT guys?
yeah,
Um, let's take a quick example. Let's say we have a nice, hip, cool marketing department.
yeah.
How do we get um, uh, the decision makers, the people who are in charge of those marketing campaigns and ads? How do we get them on board around these key concepts of data governance and management?
So first of all, I think we have to, from the top down, and that means the CEO down, we have to recognize that data, clean data, is everybody's responsibility, regardless of your role.
Mhm.
But then the next thing is for each department, it's the what's in it for me. So why should I keep my data clean? What's in it for me? Well, from a marketing point of view, you could save time because you are not cleaning out dirty data.
Mhm.
It could be that you're not sending out mail to the wrong people who are not your clients. Waste of money. You could
Mhm.
use that budget somewhere else. It could be that you are emailing the wrong people. It could even be that you have duplicates in your CRM system and you are spending money on paying for contacts in your CRM that are duplicates that you could be saving more money on, because you pay per contact.
Mhm.
So there are a number of different reasons, but I mean, ultimately, it makes all our lives easier if the data's clean. That should be motivation enough for everybody, really. Unfortunately, it's not, but yeah. So it could be things like if you're freeing up money for budgets for other stuff, maybe that's the motivation. You got to find that what what's going to get them engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. So you reference already throughout or talk a few times the difference in clean and dirty data, and you just mentioned having clean data should be a cause in itself, or should be motivation of in itself. Yet in your book and in the approach, you focus a lot around the dirty data aspect for it. And the thing that really triggered me in your publication was the dirty data maturity model that you already referenced. Um, should I look at this as the reverse, or is it the opposite of what we should be achieving? Can you shine your light a bit more about that?
Well, I think we have to first of all define what dirty data is in our organizations,
Hmm.
because different companies, different departments will have different types of dirty data. And it could be things from typos to incorrect descriptions to missing information to the wrong date formats to multiple currencies to duplicates. So let's define those first,
Mhm.
and then let's map where we think we are versus where we want to be on the dirty data maturity model. And let's like take it and make it your own, like change the names, like make it suit your business. Like don't be rigid with it. Be flexible and make it so that people relate to it and understand it and will work with it and use it.
Is there, in your opinion, a definition of what companies should be considering as clean data? Or is it different per
I
department?
think in sales and marketing, it's going to be things like the right name, the right surname, the right address, and the address is formatted properly, the right phone number, and that's formatted properly. Finance, it's going to be you have to have the right GL, general ledger code, assigned to a company so that they can report financially and accurately.
Yeah.
Procurement, it's having it classified so you can see where you're spending your money, making sure people are buying on or off contract, those kinds of things. Manufacturing, it's having the right product code, the right product description, not having multiple versions of the same thing. So
basically what you're saying is you need context always to
yeah,
define that
yeah.
definition. So following up on that, wouldn't that make it impossible for robots, read AI or other kinds of solutions to ultimately give a meaning to that contextualization?
With context, I think it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
Anything that is, yeah, if the code is right, if the description is right, say in manufacturing, then the robot can automatically order the right parts, but it has to be clean first. And
Yeah.
yeah, it might not. If you have like 3 versions of the same product with slightly different descriptions, it will not know which one is the right one to go with.
Correct. So
In
so
fact,
it's
even me looking at it would be very difficult. And I would need to use things like which of the products was most recently ordered, when was the last one used,
yes,
those kinds of things. Um, and maybe, it's not to say we won't get there one day, just not yet.
not yet. Yeah. No, but you're bringing up a good point because ultimately making the decision, let's use the product descriptions that you just used. Sometimes as a person, it's difficult as
Yeah,
well to kind of define what's best. And I remember in the old days, pre the general or ChatGPT kind of models, that sometimes we had 3 different product descriptions for something on our website, and we had hefty debates around which one was best,
yeah,
because in all honesty we just didn't know, besides
yeah.
testing.
And
So
there's other things to take into consideration, like there could be character limitations in text boxes, in which case people need to abbreviate things, and then people abbreviate different words differently, and then that causes all kinds of problems. There's lots of different things that could happen or
weapons.
go wrong.
Good. Yeah. No, I fully agree, and maybe I think you're completely right that maybe someday we will see something that's possible in that area, but at this stage, I think it will be
It's
a bit
going to
of a
need to
stretch.
learn from
Yeah.
clean data. We need to get the data clean first before it can learn all this stuff, and we're not there yet.
No, not in at least a few more years.
Yes.
Um,
I've got my business for a little while longer yet.
oh yeah, I'm quite sure of it, and yeah, and I'm quite sure we're gonna hear a lot on that area from you in the next few years.
Oh, there's lots more to come from me this year.
That's great. Um, one of the nicknames that you've received is the Mistress of Data, and you're very influential in the world of data at this moment.
Yeah.
And I've seen you speak at conferences and many of the publications I follow as well. So, what is your goals and longer term ideal? What you would like to achieve with that? Is it all around recognition, or is it more around also knowledge sharing? What's the the thing you like
Yeah,
most
it
about
really
this.
is giving people the tools to do it
So do it
themselves.
themselves.
Like, I can't help everybody in the world. We have a small team here, and it's making it work for you. I call myself an accidental influencer or a bad influencer. That was never my intention to have this much, I guess, spotlight. But what I could see was that nobody else was talking about this, and that
Yeah.
when I did talk about it, everybody resonates. And I have spoken at data events, procurement events. I was at a marketing event 2 weeks ago, and everybody was nodding their head. This touches every single part of the
Totally.
organization. And to get engaged, and you have to talk about it like dirty data, and a bit more fun and playful, because people just won't listen otherwise. If I just stand up there in my suit and just be like, and we need to clean our data because it's very bad, nobody's going to listen.
No, nobody's gonna listen. So,
Yeah.
so I think you found a voice or a way to articulate that really resonates with people, and also to makes it a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely what we need. There's already a lot of stuffy, gray, boring stuff in this domain. So making it a little bit more light, I think, is also
Yeah, and
something
there is
that's
a place for all of it. That's the other
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But I think if we are wanting to engage the wider business community, we have to be a bit more engaging.
yeah,
And the reality is that a lot of people that work in data are introverted and not necessarily people persons. And so, if I can use my voice to help with that, then I'm more than happy to do that.
absolutely. Um, One of my previous guests, who was also very influential in the domain, said, "Well, I have a second objective," and it said, "Well, there's not a lot of women yet in the IT technology domain because it's
Yeah,
traditionally been a very male dominated part." Um, is that something that inspires you as well? So would you say, it would be beneficial if I get to motivate more girls to join this domain?
absolutely. And if I can do that, especially by being myself, I grew up in a business environment where you kind of had to act like the men to get
Hmm.
further. You had to be like the men. And so to be out here talking to you with a sparkly background and pink earrings, that
Yeah,
to show young women and girls that you can do this and have fun and enjoy it, that does mean something. And certainly at my age group, there's definitely a lot less women. We didn't have people to look up to really as role models. Well, for me, data wasn't even on my radar for a long time. And so, yeah, for me, first of all, it was just, I'm just trying to get my business to grow and
hmm,
survive. And then also, I'm not just a woman in data, I'm a woman in business and procurement. And so in all of those areas, I have been um, patronized at times, or people are surprised that it's my business, or I am told how to run my business.
yeah,
And so if I can kind of start to batter that out of people, so that we can just all be equals, and not have to deal with that kind of stuff coming up, because we have to deal with a lot as it is. So yeah, if I can, and also I'm not afraid to speak back,
yeah.
and
No,
I don't take any nonsense. And again, a lot of women don't feel comfortable being able to do or say those things. And you'll have seen, I've really gone at people, particularly events that have pretended that they have great female speakers and more than this and that, and then you look in the audience and it's all men there. Like, I am more than happy to call that stuff out, so
yeah, no,
I'm not
absolutely, and
afraid.
I think you should definitely keep doing that because that's
Yeah.
That's truly inspiring. Now,
But
suppose.
it encourages, sorry to interrupt, but it really does. Once you say it, other women then come forward and go, yeah,
Yeah,
I think the
absolutely,
same. That's happened to me. And so sometimes it just needs that first step.
absolutely. So if somebody's listening who is either a younger student or a career, or somebody who's already in their career and um, thinking, I would like to either change or specialize and be a very successful woman in data, what would be your key piece of advice?
So it's all about, you have to have self-belief. So for me, I know I'm terrible at maths. I know
Mhm.
I'm not good at certain things. I really focused and honed in on the things that I was good at and got better at those. So if you come and challenge me on anything spend data cleaning related, I I will be able to, back myself 100%. And that gives me confidence, because you do have people who challenge you and think they know better or do. And if you really know your stuff, you've got nothing to hide from.
Right.
So really build up your confidence by focusing on the things that you're already good at. And if you don't know what you like yet, keep experimenting and trying new things until you find it.
Good. I think, Susan, that those are some excellent parting words of wisdom. I think building up the confidence is definitely crucial in order to excel in anything that you do. And it showcases for you as well. I think you're having a truly inspiring story, that a lot
Yeah,
of
I'm having
people.
fun. You have to have fun too. That's really
Uh,
important.
Absolutely, and I'm actually relating, and I think you absolutely have a fantastic and very, very inspiring story. So, with
Thank
that,
you.
I would like to thank you so much for being with us on the show today.
It's
It's
been
been
my
an
pleasure.
absolute pleasure to have you here at Big Data Talks, and I'm quite sure we're going to connect more in the future.